shorter?
No. No.
So we just follow.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We can do some questions during the switchover, and
Okay.
it's valuable material. You can do as long or short as you want.
Okay, thanks.
Folks, if we could settle into our seats, that would be lovely. We're going to be starting our next presentation now. So joining us today is Nick Vidal, who will be talking to us about the open source community, its past and future. Thank you very much for coming, Nick.
Thank you. So thank you guys for receiving me. It's a joy to be here in Brussels. Je vais parler en anglais. Je suis désolé. I'm going to be speaking in English. I'm sorry. But I just came from Brazil, and it was 35 degrees Celsius there. So it's nice. Today's sunny, so it's nice. And it was snowing yesterday. It was pretty nice as well. And it's great to be here at FOSDEM. So actually today is a very special day. Does anybody know here what it is today? What's the date today? It's February the 3rd, right? So what is it?
Super Bowl Sunday. It's the day Bill Murray woke up happy.
Well,
21st anniversary.
Exactly. You're right. So we are actually celebrating 21 years of the open source initiative and open source. And so this is pretty exciting because we actually celebrated, so on February the 3rd, 1998, Palo Alto, California, the third open source was created. And the same month, in February, the OSI was founded by Bruce Perens and Eric Raymond, and a lot of people from the open source community at that time created OSI. And yes, to celebrate the 20 years, we had this idea of let's celebrate throughout the whole world, throughout the whole year. And this is what happened during this the whole 2018. We participated in over 30 events worldwide with the best conferences. And these are just some highlights of events that we participated in. So we actually started off in Australia, Linux Conf Australia. Last year at FOSDEM, we were here with a keynote. So Simon Phipps and Italo, they also presented here. And we had participation not only in Australia, Europe, Asia, Latin America, all over. So it was very exciting. And I had the opportunity to work together with the OSI and to travel to some of these places and to talk with the community and to learn from them. And so these are the 10 lessons that I learned throughout the whole year. And so I'll make something really fun. For each one of these lessons, I'll have one photo from an event, and I'll tell a bit of a history of what happened there. And I'll talk about the lesson that I learned. And hopefully you can learn a little as well, and we can all learn together. So the first lesson that I learned was about open source history. I've been working with open source for a very long time as well. But it's so exciting to see how open source came to be 20 years ago and to learn about that. And I encourage each one of you to read up about the history of open source. It's so rich, it's so exciting, and it's actually amazing that we thrived. And of course, there's several challenges, but it's amazing that a small group, 20 years ago, they got together, and now open source is everywhere. So this is a photo from OSCON last year, and they were also celebrating their 20 years, and they invited us to participate there. And we actually had a full day track and we invited several speakers. And we celebrated not only our anniversary and not only OSCON's anniversary, but also 25 years of the Debian project, 35 years of the GNU project, 20 years of, let me see if I remember, 25 years of Red Hat, 25 years of the FreeBSD. So we invited several speakers to talk about this. Oh, and I was forgetting, 20 years of the Mozilla project as well. So it was pretty exciting for everyone to share those stories. And I did mention some older projects like Red Hat. It has 25 years of history. How come Red Hat has 25 years of history if open source is only 20 years? It's because open source was part of a continuum. So it was preceded by the free software. And this is what's nice to know. So open source came in 1998, and one of the first tasks by OSI was to draft the open source definition. This is what defines what's open source. And it's so interesting because if we look at today, the challenges that we have today, and some threats to open source, we can see that this foundation is very precise in what's open source. And it's a really strong foundation. And this was derived from the Debian Free Software Guidelines. This was done by Bruce Perens, the co-founder of OSI. So I would like to repeat this. Each one of these, it has an explanation. If you go to the opensource.org website, you'll be able to see a bit of description from each one of these. We don't have much time here, but I would like to read this for you guys. So we have 10 principles that define what's open source. So free redistribution, the source code, derived works, integrity of the off source code, no discrimination against persons or groups, no discrimination against fields of endeavor, distribution of the lessons. The lessons must not be specific to a product. The lessons must not restrict other software, and the lessons must be technology neutral. So this is a very, very powerful statement and a very strong foundation. And as we see the challenges that we face even today and throughout the whole history actually of open source, I think this is very solid and it has helped us. So as you can see, I forgot to comment here. So this is Simon Phipps, the director of OSI. That's Bruce Perens, the co-founder of OSI. Denise Cooper, a former board member of OSI. And Michael Tiemann, also a former member and VP of open source at Red Hat. And this is we had a panel there at OSCON. It was really great to hear their story. We have this video recorded, and we'll be sharing that video with you guys, and it will be up on our website. And so this was FOSDEM last year, and Simon Phipps, he gave a keynote about the 20 years of open source, and also the 35 years of the GNU project. And this is something that we highlighted during the whole year. We wanted to highlight that this is a continuum, that open source came from the free software movements. It was a way to sell the idea of free software to businesses that made sense to businesses. And so I think it's really important to highlight this. And Simon here, he gave a keynote, and here's a photo from Richard Stallman, who is the founder of the Free Software Foundation. And so, as I mentioned to you, the Debian Free Software Guideline was the foundation for the OSI, the 10 principles. And this was inspired by the free software definition. And here, we also want to highlight this, the 4 freedoms that define what's free software. So we have the freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose. That's actually the rule number 0. The freedom to study how the program works and change it so it does your computing as you wish. The freedom to redistribute copies so you can help your neighbor. And the freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions to others. So this is also very solid, and the principles are very strong. And while it's challenging today to achieve this, we should always try to achieve this. I think it's really important. And so open source came to help free software. It's a continuum, and we want to promote freedom as well, of course. And so this is a photo from Mozilla Festival. I really like this photo here. You can see the Firefox there. And as you know, there are many challenges for open source during the whole 20 years. And this is something that has happened several times, the embrace, extend, and extinguish. And what I learned throughout the year is how much this has affected open source. And 2018 was particularly interesting because we had as you know, Redis, they launched the Apache plus Commons class. So they embraced open source, the Apache license. They extended, and they were trying to redefine what's open source with the Commons clause. And if you read the 10 principles of open source, and if you read the 4 freedoms, you see that it doesn't match. You can't try to review what's open source and what's free software. But it's a really strong foundation. And if you really want to change and redefine what's open source and redefine what's free software, you really have to have the support from the community. And you really have to think about the consequences. So this was very challenging. And this happened last year. We also had MongoDB, who launched a new license called the server-side public license. And this also, if you look at how it matches against the 10 open source principles, the open source definition, and the free software definition, it doesn't work. So these were the challenges that we faced last year while we were celebrating. Of course, we know what are the reasons why those companies, they launched those licenses. Monetizing open source is hard, but we don't have to be greedy about it, right? So this is an event that happened in London, Sustain OS, which is an event to explore how we can make open source sustainable, and how can it make financial sense, and how developers can benefit and get something back from their work. And so we encourage this. Instead of creating new licenses, we encourage discussing business models and ways of making open source sustainable. But it's quite interesting because open source is not, the whole idea here is not to make a company profitable. It's not capitalism, I would say. It's compatible with capitalism, but it's a whole different world. It's more of a gift economy. So this is Denise Cooper in an event called FOSS Backstage. And she was talking about some open source heroes. We see several heroes throughout the whole history of open source and free software, who really gave their time and dedication and to make free software. And they gave their time for free. They donated their time. And so that's why it's a gift economy. So open source is sustainable in a way. It does have its challenges in terms of monetizing, but it's a whole different world. And how we can make a business out of it, and how business can work together, that's a challenge, and we need to work on that. And it's not just code that we give as gifts. We have people who organize events like FOSDEM. It's run by many volunteers. We have design, we have marketing, we have a whole bunch of people volunteering their time to make open source and free software thrive. So it was really exciting. This is an event called CHAOSCON, which is to measure how healthy an open source community is. So not just code, but other points, other metrics as well. So in terms of diversity, how many events there are around an open source project. So this is pretty exciting as well. Well, when open source projects, when they just open up to discussions, they're open to contributions. They have anybody can contribute, anybody can join a conversation. It makes it vulnerable to attacks, open to attacks. So it's really important for us to discuss this. And so we just had that here, and we have Molly, Ricky, and this is Christine Pearson here. And I'm not sure if you guys know, but the term open source software was coined by a woman, and this is really nice, because in a field that's dominated by men, to know that open source, the label was created by a woman, and we had all the success because of that. It's really interesting. So this is the open source summit in Vancouver that we had last year, and the OSI brought Christine there to present, and also we made an acknowledgement to her. And so this is something that we should also work on at the community. There was a survey by GitHub that showed that open source, the work on open source was very challenging for different people, and for inclusion, and for being women suffering harassments and all. And this is because we can't fire a volunteer. Anybody can join, and anybody can say whatever they want. And this is very upsetting. And so one solution to that, and this is something that we should work on, it's values and principles and code of conduct. We have a code of conduct here. So Leslie and Laura, thanks for having this. So this is really important to make sure that everyone feels welcome here, and they can contribute, and they can discuss in a kind manner. And so this was DrupalCon. Last year I was invited to participate here, and this is Dries. And it was really a really nice event, because Dries, he talks about the values and principles. He actually launched that during these events. And I'll just show here an overview of the values and principles from the Drupal community. So it's to prioritize impact, to work better together, to strive for excellence, treat each other with dignity and respect, and enjoy what you do, have fun. So these are the 4 values from the Drupal community. There's if you go to the website, there's more of a description of each one of these. This is something that we should have for each community if you want to make it better, if we want to make it more welcoming to other people. And there are other open source projects that are also adopting this into code. So yesterday, Mitchell Baker from the Mozilla Foundation was talking about their values and their principles. So this is something that we should study and adopt from each community and make it part of our own open source projects. So collaboration is key. This is Patrick, my boss, and I invited him to participate at Campus Party. This is an event in Brazil, a very large event with over 100,000 participants and 8,000 campers. So these are people that actually camp inside the conference. It's a really large event for a whole week. It's very similar to FOSDEM in a way. And we talked about open source there. And the OSI is a very small group. We had almost no budgets, very little staff. We wanted to celebrate the 20 years. So we worked together with several events to celebrate this. And everyone was very open to help us in this. So we participated with over 30 events, thanks to the conference organizers, thanks to volunteers, thanks to the OSI board of directors who traveled a lot to share those ideas with people. And so this really makes it special and shows how the community comes together to celebrate and to contribute and to share code. And finally, the final lesson, the power of the community. So we wanted to celebrate the 20 years. And one event, it was really challenging to celebrate in Asia because none of the board members is from Asia. So we had to partner with several people. And we had FOSSAsia, was an event in Singapore. We had somebody helping there. And we also had one event in Shenzhen, in China. And this was one of the most surprising events that we had. We said, this is the idea, we want to celebrate the 20 years, but you guys feel free to do whatever you want. And so what they did is, they had a cake here for the 20 years, and everybody was wearing a Jedi cap and the saber to cut the cake here. Is this how I pronounce it? Saber or saber? Saber, sorry. So they actually cut the cake with the sabers, and it was pretty exciting. And the motto of the event was, "May the source be with you." So, so it was pretty exciting, and this is something that we didn't plan. This is something that it was very much like an open source project. We had the foundation. We said, guys, we want to celebrate the 20 years. And they really took this and they celebrated in their own way. It was very much open. And so this shows the success of the celebrations when we have the power of the community, when somebody takes your idea and makes it better. So it was really exciting to have that. We actually sent Tony, here's a photo from him. So he's a former OSI director as well. And he went there to celebrate the 20 years and to share those stories with the Chinese community. So these are the 10 lessons that I learned throughout the whole year. It was very exciting. I wanted to share those lessons with you. Hopefully, you guys learn a few lessons as well. We had so much fun, and it was such a good learning experience for all of us that we want to continue with that. So we celebrated together with other communities, and we enjoyed celebrating with the Mozilla community as well. We enjoy with the FreeBSD community, who's also celebrating here their 25 years at FOSDEM. And we want to continue that. We want to share those stories. We want you to share your stories, to read about the history of your projects, of your companies as well. If you work in a company, try to learn about the history and the values and the principles inside your company and share that. And so we want to make this, we want to share the knowledge as well. And we want everyone to learn and become better and make open source and free software better. So thank you very much for the opportunity, everyone.
We have learned from stage this morning, our best policy is to say, what questions do you have? Anybody have any questions? I'll run along with the mic. Any questions? Great, coming.
So I like to say I'm from the GitHub generation of open source, which I think around here might get some rocks thrown at me. But I've been working on learning the history and participating in possibly the merging of those two paths. So if somebody is newer to open source, feels a little like an outsider here, but wants to participate, wants to really understand why FLOSS instead of OSS, where do you recommend they get involved?
Yeah, so we have a new generation, indeed. People who weren't there 20 years ago and don't know the history. So I think it's really interesting to look up at Wikipedia and look up the history of both open source and free software. Also, at these conferences that we had, we really try to tell the history, and hopefully you can continue that, to share those values and principles and the history and stories. So if you want to, for example, present a FOSDEM next year about the history of free software and open source, I think that would be really nice. And conference organizers who also want to open this up for people to talk about, I think it's really interesting as well. So, and you can also check at opensource.org and the Free Software Foundation. They also have a lot of history information there. And I think it's really important to, I'm glad that you're curious now about learning about this. And that's the whole idea, for you guys to look it up and see how it happened.
We also will totally introduce you to story time anytime you ask, Matt. Other questions, folks? Excellent. I'll pass the mic back. Here, make it clear you pass the mic back.
Hi Nick, it's Ashley from Sales Agility.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
just want to, I believe you're doing work with schools. Is that correct? Where you're introducing open source into schools? Do you have? Can you go a little bit more about that? Because that certainly could help people introduce more open source into a wider audience than just GitHub, for example.
Yeah. So Patrick, who is the general manager of OSI, he was a former. He has a lot of involvement with the higher education, and he also has a project called FOSS Desktop for Kids. And so we're trying to bring this to more schools. There's an open curriculum. If you go to opensource.org, you'll be able to see it. And we're trying to bring this to schools, not just talking about technology, but also talking about the history and other aspects of free and open